Hello and welcome into the stew with JT Brew here on Fantasy in Frames week 14 college football season. It's flown by. It's been crazy. My guy Ben Dyer unable to join us tonight. Had some family stuff going on, but my buddy Toast in the house with us tonight. We're going to talk about all the things going on in week 14, all the rivalry matchups in college football to finish out the season on this Thanksgiving weekend. Stick with us. You're in the stew.
You up on trades and why you move, you ain't designed to lose. Find you jumping over seemingly nothing, racking up points, makes the game a little more fun to watch. Can drop release, we started with the mock draft and now we making a mockery of the leaderboard. Quite obviously not a scrub, so start an institute, make evaluations like a commissioner do. It's to the point your wife make you watch in a different room. Update your roster and pick and choose when you get some news. Not much that we enjoy more than sifting through through new statistics to make it to our end zones through different routes. Universities, institutes, down to homies who click in groups. I introduce you to the stew with JT Brew.
Welcome all. Toast, thanks for joining me, stepping in for buddy Ben tonight. Talk a little week 14 college football. Thanksgiving is here already. It seems impossible. Last week of the college football regular season, but we're in luck this year. 12-team playoffs, finally. After all these years of talking about it, I tell you, remember before this happened, everyone said, it's going to really water down college football. If you have a long playoffs, do all this, and then all we're doing is getting nothing but excitement coming down the end. 2 or 3 lost teams could get in it. I think we've got a lot of teams deserving to be in it. To me, I cannot be any more fired up. The scenarios, in all honesty, folks, I would go through them with you, but it would take us an hour just go through the scenarios of who wins where, what the tiebreakers are. It's going to be insane. A lot of teams got to win in certain scenarios and have other teams lose in order to get in the conference championship games. A lot different than has been in the past where most divisions were most conferences were broken up into 2 divisions. Whoever won the division got to the conference championship game. Null and void this year. Everybody went into one big conference, and just the top 2 teams, regardless, just record-wise, are going to get in and play the conference championship. It's going to be interesting to see, Toast. Does it burn somebody? Does somebody get into the conference championship game and lose, and that actually knocks them out of the playoff, and a team that didn't get in the conference championship game ends up sneaking in and over it? We've seen it happen before in the old college football playoffs when there was only 4 teams where a team didn't make it in and got in. What do you think? Is there a chance that happens this year? Do you think somebody could justify I didn't make the SEC championship game, but Bama still gets in?
Yeah. So I guess again, as a fan who doesn't watch a ton of college football, but actually watches enough to be dangerous, JT, I think this is only maybe a benefit for college football. Before, you'd actually have only those 4 teams. And how would you differentiate that from 1 to 4, but then 5 to 12? It would be like point differential, right? And how bad did you actually beat like a freaking Austin P or somebody else? Now you really don't actually have that. I know point differential and strength of schedule can actually play into it, but it comes down to kind of win and losses and actually the strength of schedule. And doesn't matter whether you beat the piss out of actually some team that is irrelevant 70-7 and actually week 3, that makes no difference anymore. I couldn't imagine that anybody would actually be against this format that's in college football now.
Yeah, to me, it just makes everything more exciting. We're not talking about 4 teams. We're talking about 16 to 20 teams coming here at the end of the year. I love it. I absolutely love it. I know teams are like, 12 is too many. Maybe 8's enough. I love this 12 format. The top 4 teams get a bye. You got to work your way through it. I love it. I mean, the SEC, if there's any year to have it big where there's no clear-cut favorite in the SEC, this is the year. I mean, we'll just start off with them and talk about, we've got Texas. They've got Texas A&M here in the final game of the week. Before we get into the point spreads and all that, we're just going to kind of talk a little brief scenarios here. They're 10-1, a win. They're in the SEC championship game. A loss, you've got Georgia, who's 6-2, the game behind them. Tennessee's 5-2. A win over Vandy would get them to 6-2. Texas A&M, a win by them would get them to 6-2, tied with Texas at 6-2. So you could realistically have 4 teams tied for first place in the SEC, and then depending on the tiebreakers, how they break that down would determine what two teams actually make the SEC championship game. Then the question becomes, if you lose that SEC championship game, do one of the teams that didn't make it into the championship game that ends up with one less loss than you, do they get in over you? Because it doesn't say anything about the top two teams that make the championship game get in. It's only the team that wins the conference. So you got to win the conference to automatically get in. So like I said, we could bust out these scenarios left and right, but it would be so many scenarios to go through. I'm going to leave it up to smarter people that know the tiebreakers to get in there and really hammer that out. I think a lot of people have waited to do it because it is so extensive. They're waiting to see what happens this week, and then they can talk about tiebreakers for the championship, everything like that. Big Ten. You got Oregon 8-0. They're going to against Oregon State. So they've actually, they're played all the way through. Indiana 7-1, Ohio State 7-1, Penn State 7-1. All those teams you would think right now are into the playoffs. Now the question is, if some tiebreaker scenario and someone gets in and loses in the Big 12 championship, Big 10 championship game, would that knock them out? I don't think so, as all those teams only have one loss, and I think a 2-loss Big 10 team gets in. We're in Illinois country, in Illinois, in Champaign, 8-3. The fact to think that the Illini right now are 8-3 with Penn State, Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon all ahead of them, and all of them only have one loss. Pretty great season for the Illini. Another huge comeback win last week. But I tell you what, this has been one of the most exciting college football seasons I think I remember in a long time. All these conferences have been interesting. I mean, even the ones that people talk smack about, say like the Big 12, people are like, oh, I don't know. A lot of people left. This one's going down the wire. You got Arizona State 9-2, 6-2 in the conference. Same thing with BYU, Iowa State. Colorado is right there. They're 6-2, also tied for first, but they lost to Kansas last week. They're 8-3 overall, so they need to win and have a couple teams lose to get into the Big 12 championship game. You figure whoever wins that gets in, whoever loses doesn't make the final 12, but it could happen. It could be questionable. We'll see what happens, but all I know is I'm excited for this weekend. I'm always excited for Thanksgiving, and then a couple games right after that, all piled up on the weekend. And the fact that it's rivalry week, we still, some of these rivalries have changed or they play in a different times of the year just because the way all the conference scheduling has changed, but there's still a lot of rivalry games that still happen every year. And I'm pretty pumped about those because I don't know how you feel, but it's like even games that I don't care about those teams that much, I just love to see the rivalry. It's so much more exciting. And to me, it's just a fantastic way to finish off the regular season in college football that no other sport does it like this. No other sport has the head-to-head, either conference or state rivalries that they play all in the same time of the year, all to finish off the season.
Yeah, if I could maybe fast forward the season, right? And I know, again, huge college football fans are going to want to watch every single game of the entire season. If you are a fan who maybe watches your local team, and I actually watch the Illini, right? I watch every single week, but I don't watch a whole lot of other college football. I'll watch some big games here, especially if I actually have a little bit of gambling here. But you got to actually admit, like, again, this is the actual best format. I really want to see, like, this is really the week I would actually want to tune into. Maybe last week, now this week, and actually been moving forward. That's when it really kind of ramps up. And again, somebody who actually doesn't watch a ton, this is when I'm actually going to go ahead and open up my my gambling account. And I may go ahead and start bet some games. I'm going to reach out to you, JT, and say, hey, who do you actually like here? But you actually, JT, you would actually started off by actually mentioning that Texas A&M game. Is that going to be a game we're going to talk about here? Because
yep, we're going to jump in on that one. That one's a huge one. That one is an absolute monster. So we're going to get in that one too. I'm getting ready to pull this up. Jamie jumping in the chat, say what's up, guys. Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate you jumping on the show. Also, Mr. Magic, yo, what's up, man? Thanks for jumping in, guys. If you got any suggestions, as always, questions, send them to us. If you got games you like spreads, you like player props, throw them in the chat. We can either talk about what you like or what if we like them, or I'm always up for suggestions, right, Toast? I want to know what everybody else likes. I want to know what everybody else is betting on. Throw those in the chat with us. It is always, great to kind of see what everybody else is thinking as we kind of jump through here. So I'm going to pull up here our friends over at DraftKings Sportsbook. We're going to pop this one up here for us, Toast, and kind of talk about, what's going on this week. So a big one to start off, and we'll talk about this. This one has a huge in the American Conference, Tulane and Memphis, 13.5-point favorite. This game is actually on Thanksgiving. So if you're one of those people who want to put a 3 or a 14 parlay in, you're going to get on the NFL games and you're looking for something else to throw in the mix, this is your game. This is the one college game on Thanksgiving Day. It's a 6:30 start. Again, Memphis 13.5, 13.5-point dog to Tulane. These two teams have been really good lately. I was going to pull up where they've been at lately as I can jump in here. Sorry, folks. My fingers aren't working.
Yeah, Tulane's been just shit people lately. Let's just
Tulane has been absolutely phenomenal. We've talked about them. Me and Ben have been on them a bunch the last couple of weeks. Tulane comes in at number 17. They're one of those teams you would think with the 2 losses they can't get in, but if a couple other teams lose and they win out in this conference, there's a chance they could possibly sneak in. It's an outside chance as they haven't had that tough of a schedule, but they've looked good. They won 35-0 against Navy a couple weeks ago, 52-6 against Temple, 34-3 against Charlotte, 45-37 North Texas. I mean, they've been pounding teams of late. They've looked really good. Their 2 losses early in the year were just by 7 to Kansas State and 15 to Oklahoma. So 2 quality losses as both those teams are ranked in the top 20 when they played them. This one's tough for me because I think Tulane's the team on fire here. 13.5 is quite a bit. Memphis has been solid this year. I think they've been a little less dominant than I thought they would be. Their 2 losses have come to Navy, 56-44 and 44-36 to UTSA. Last couple of weeks for them, 27-20 over Rice, 53-18 against UAB. I like Tulane in this game, but man, I think this one's going to be closer. If I'm taking this one, I think I'm going to have to get on the over, or I think I'm going to have to move this points down for Tulane. I think both these teams can put up some points. To me, I would love to see this game more like in the 49 range. If you can get like 49-50, move it down just a hair and then take the over. That's kind of where I'm leaning. I think this is going to be an exciting game. I'm looking forward to watching it and putting it on. But the 13.5 for Tulane, it scares me just a bit, being almost 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, JT, I would not touch the spread with a 10-foot pole. The over 55.5 looks juicy. Looks very, very good. And like you said, even if you could end up getting it later on in the week, if it actually drops to 53.5, 54, I would jump on that in a heartbeat. The reason I like this is the fact that these offenses actually look pretty balanced on paper. And again, I'm a stats guy. I have not watched either one of these teams. I'm not going to pretend I've watched Tulane and Memphis, but they have very efficient quarterbacks who don't turn over the football. They've actually had quite a bit of success in the air. They run. They got running backs who actually at least have 15 touchdowns apiece. This has overwritten all over. And if you look at their last 5, neither one of the teams can actually. And now I say neither one of the teams. Tulane's actually stopping, but Navy, I assume they're dog shit, right? 35-0. Temple, they've
been pretty good, but Tulane just put it to them. Yeah.
Yeah, Temple's awful. We actually know Temple's awful. I imagine Charlotte's not a football team as well. I mean, so Memphis has actually had a little bit more of the challenge here. It just feels like an over game. That's probably the way you should actually go. Maybe you end up getting this game where you're on the live bet. I don't think weather's going to play a factor in this. I do actually know that there's going to be some snow out west. That's not going to bring some rain from the Gulf and actually coming up. So I would imagine it's going to be dry in this game. Good footing. You're going to be able to actually play a high scoring game. The over just feels the right play here.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Next game up. And we're going to kind of move through some of these. If we skip a game and you guys got questions about a game or you want us to talk about something, feel free to throw it in there and say something, as we're not going to touch on every game that we got going this week. Minnesota's Wisconsin's another Big Ten game early. Minnesota plus 2.5, Wisconsin minus 2.5, over under 42.5. Minnesota's lost back-to-back games, but man, what a tough game against Penn State. 1 point loss last week was what a battle. Wisconsin has lost 4 in a row, haven't won since they played Northwestern and won 23-3, though they did have a tough 3-point loss at home to number 1 Oregon. This game scares me. I don't know what to expect out of these teams. If you just absolutely twist my arm and say, well, just gut bet. Minnesota doesn't win out at Wisconsin very much, but I think Minnesota is a better team than Wisconsin is this year. This game scares me. I'm probably avoiding it unless I can figure out some kind of insider information or something I would like. I think Minnesota take the points if you're going to do it at +3, and that's only because I just don't know where to go with this game. And at any time for me, I'm going to take the points in a situation like that, especially if I think that team's slightly better. But we know Wisconsin in the past, they're tough to beat at home. Big rivalry here with Minnesota. That one's a real toughie for me. I'm probably avoiding it, but if I had to go, I would get Minnesota, move it up to 3, and get myself a field goal.
Yeah, JT, let me ask you on that Wisconsin game. If you're a Wisconsin Badger fan, or you're actually on the staff, obviously you're super disappointed about how last year probably went. This year's actually went as well. Do you really want to go 6-6 and actually get an invite to a crap bowl? Is that worse for your program? I wonder in the event, have they packed it in? And I'm not going to say the stats actually packed it in, but is this a lost season? Minnesota has actually got way more to actually lose than Wisconsin. If Wisconsin, is it worse missing a bowl altogether, or actually worse actually going to a crap bowl if you're to Wisconsin?
Yeah, Wisconsin's been such a good program. It's tough. You're going 6-6, but hey, look at Nebraska, who beat them last week. They were playing for their first bowl in like 8 years, which seems insanity. Yeah. At some point, you got to make bowl games. You want to make bowl games. Wisconsin's not been the Wisconsin of old that we've known lately. They've been so up and down. I mean, they lose by 3 at home to Oregon. You think, okay, like they're right in the mix, and they go and get worked by Nebraska. They get worked at Iowa after playing Penn State fairly close. They lost a tough game at USC. We're in it with Alabama for a while before Alabama blew them out. This team has just been so all over the place. I think Minnesota is a more consistent team. I like PJ Fleck in Minnesota in this one. If I had to, that's what I'm taking. But man, these two teams, Minnesota. I don't know if it's because Minnesota is just typically not been as good as Wisconsin. They're only one game apart in record wise, but I feel like Minnesota has been so much better this year than them. I don't know if that's just me looking in from the outside. I just like what I've seen out of Minnesota more.
Yeah, you just wish that the price was better on Minnesota, right? I mean, they're only at +110 on the road going into Wisconsin. I assume they have not had success at Wisconsin over the years.
Not very
That's
much.
just my
Not very
guess,
much
right? So you would expect that maybe to be like a +170 or +180 just traditionally. But the fact that it's only a +110, again, not a good price. So I agree with you. Probably a game we're just going to stay away from.
Next one is a big one, Colorado, Oklahoma State. Now, this one's going to be interesting. Colorado really needed to win last week. If they would have won last week versus Kansas, they would have held their own destiny. A win on Saturday would have guaranteed them a spot in the Big 12 championship game with a chance to make the playoffs. Now they need help. They got to get some losses from a few teams. They need some people to get upset. They're 16.5-point favorite, quite a bit, but Oklahoma's kind of fallen off. They've just, after what looked like was going to be a decent team to start this year, start off 3-0. I mean, their biggest win was Arkansas by 8 in the second game of the season. Since then, it's just got ugly. This team is 3-8 coming into this game. They're on an 8-game losing streak. It just, every time they think they're going to be in a game, they just can't make it happen. I think Colorado hammers them at home here. If I'm jumping into a parlay, I'll take 17 because I think Colorado needs to look good. And the thing for Colorado is they play early, where a couple of the teams they need to lose are late. So they need to win it so they can sit back and hope and pray that the other team wins and helps them out. I think Colorado hammers them. If you want to try to get it down to like 14, I can understand doing that. 65 for the over-under seems really high to me. Now, I know Oklahoma State has been in some absolute shootouts. They just lost 56-48 last week to Texas Tech. So that 65 makes me a little bit nervous. Colorado's defense has been better, other than them just getting absolutely worked by Devin Neal last week, as he had a monster game for Kansas running the ball. But their defense has looked much, much better outside of that. I'm taking Colorado 17. If I'm taking a parlay, I'm going to move this one down to 13. I'm going to give myself a 2 touchdowns to cover for me. That's most likely where I'm going to go there. I'm probably going to throw that in a parlay.
Yeah, JT, and it feels like a prop game all the way around.
And I'm going to be all over the props on this one. Yeah. I'll put it out. I'm telling you right now, I'm going to be all over Travis Hunter over 100 yards receiving, Sugar Sanders over 300 yards passing, Sugar Sanders over 2 or 3 touchdowns, Hunter with a touchdown. I've been on those props pretty much all year, and they've hit a really solid amount this year. So this game is probably going to be a same game parlay for me. I'll put it together where I move the line down a little bit, get it down to like 13 or 14, and then take all those guys over on the yards. Colorado has been a prop bet dream most of this year because they just throw the ball all over the place. They're going to put up points. And like I said, Oklahoma State has just not been good. So this one, I feel like Colorado is going to sit back, win a big one early, and then kind of like go from there. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna get an early one out of the way, and they're gonna sit back and see if they can get some win. Hopefully, somebody helps them out and gets wins later. The next one, the other Heisman favorite right now. So we've talked about this bet all year. Travis Hunter. If you're looking at Heisman odds, he's up to minus 800 or minus 850, depending on what site you're looking at. I just cashed out on my plus 7,500 Travis Hunter Heisman bet this last week. I was worried about the loss to Kansas. I said it on the show. If they lose to Kansas, there's a chance he goes down. They lost to Kansas, but he played great in that game. And actually more people saw him play, I think, for the first time. And he actually went up in the Heisman as a Heisman favorite. A little surprised about that. I was worried that they missed the playoffs. That would hurt him. Right now, looking like I should have held on, but I got a pretty nice little payout at plus 7,500. So I was all over the cash out on that one. The guy right behind him is Boise State, and that's Ashton Jeanty. He's now at anywhere from plus 400 to plus 600. So again, if you still like Jeanty's a nice little spot right there. If you like him to have a monster game and say Colorado misses, there's a chance that Jeanty gets in the playoffs and gets some of the Heisman votes. If he's in and Hunter's not in, I could see that it's swinging back his way. Jamie jumps in and says, "Oh no, you cashed out." I know, Jamie. I was talking about it for like 3 weeks. My girlfriend was all over me. She's like, "How can you not just take that money?" Like I said, I was trying to hold on as long as I possibly could. But the Kansas game had me real nervous. I thought Kansas was going to upset him. And I swear I thought he would go down after that loss. But
Kansas has been doing that to everybody lately.
Yeah, the Kansas has looked great. Kansas right now is playing like the Kansas everybody thought was going to be this season. Yeah. The next one up is Boise State. Now, they played well lately. They're looking to make the playoffs. If they win this game, they're in. So you got to figure they're coming. The problem with them lately, 17-13 over Wyoming last week, and a not good Wyoming team. Barely covering this one. Oregon State has been awful this season, but these spreads for Boise State have been huge. I lean Boise State even with the big number at 19. Oregon State's been really bad, but so is Wyoming, and they barely covered against Wyoming. Maybe at home this week they finish it out. I think Boise State wants to come and make a statement as they want to make sure they're guaranteeing themselves into the playoffs. I think they come out big. I think GT has a big game, and I think they win this one by 3 scores.
Yeah, JT, it comes down to quarterback play, in my opinion. Madsen for Boise State better actually have a game where he can actually go ahead and be efficient and actually have some quick scores. And here's the reason why: is both these teams actually love to run the football. And to me, when you're actually loving to run the football, that's taking time off the clock. And that keeps a score somewhat close, because if you actually look at Oregon State, they can run it. They can actually run it. They've got the actually horses to do it. So that makes me a little bit nervous about the minus 19.5 right now in Boise State. If I'm actually really seriously betting this game, I'm probably actually teasing a little bit, putting in a parlay and actually making it like a a plus 22, 23, 24 and a half for Oregon State to actually cover, because I just, when you both run the ball that efficiently, and again, Oregon State, they're not a program that's just like a perennial powerhouse. They know they actually need to win to actually probably get into a bowl.
Well,
This is a big game
they've
for
been
them.
bad. They
So
were on a losing streak like no other. They had lost 5 in a row after beating Colorado State. They're a team, another one you just don't know what you're going to get out of them. They've looked decent at times this year. Their defense has looked really good, and then other times they've looked awful. I mean, they just got a monster win over Washington State, 41-38 last week, a huge upset of Washington State. A week after losing 28-0 to Air Force, who's been awful this year. So it's like you just don't know what you're going to get out of this team. They also played UNLV tough 33-25 earlier in the year, but then got blown out by California.
And Cal,
I just don't
actually,
trust this
right,
game.
Cal, they played Miami tough, right? And I was actually at Cal, so I don't know. This one makes me a little bit nervous. If first glance, I'm thinking go ahead and take Oregon State to actually cover. But just because, again, you wonder what kind of games is it going to be like. Also, too, there is a lot of weather that's going to actually happen out west, especially in Kansas, Colorado. Lots of snow for Friday. You wonder actually how that's going to affect this game here. I don't know. Haven't actually looked at the radar. Haven't looked at it at all. But if it ends up being where that's the case, then you could even see more so. This is going to be a ground game. And they actually become one-dimensional. They're actually going to be running the football, and that's where I actually like Oregon State to actually cover that. Boise State will win this game, but can Oregon State actually cover? 19's a lot.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. To me, this feels like Boise State should absolutely roll them. But again, they've been on a high all year, playing really well, and they've struggled just a bit the last couple of weeks. And then Oregon State, like I said, you just never know what you can get. I can't believe that they won against Washington State last week, and then they turn around and get Boise State. So that, if you want to avoid that game, I can see you avoiding that.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this real quick before we move on. If Oregon State actually had lost last week and they're 4-7, different story, right? Renewed energy. You know what? We can actually sneak into a bowl game. Oregon State, I would imagine they don't make a bowl every year, right?
Nope.
So if they actually have an opportunity to do that, and actually, I would think that this is their Super Bowl. Are they going to go in there?
Oh, they would love to knock off Boise State and knock them out of the playoffs. Absolutely.
Yep. So you just, again, 19's a lot. 19.5's a lot. So, yeah. So we'll see how it actually goes.
That's a tough one. You're right. I'm going to think about that one because I've been on Boise State a lot this year, but they've got me a few times on some of these big, real big spreads. Moving down the list here, this is a game that if you asked me, maybe a couple weeks ago, I would have just smashed Ole Miss at minus 26 against Mississippi State. Huge loss last week to Florida. Basically, I would say knocking them out of the playoffs. If they would have won last week against Florida, they would have came into this game with a chance to make the SEC championship game. That's pretty much null and void, even though they do have the really nice win over Georgia, Oklahoma, and South Carolina. A tough 3-point loss to Kentucky and a 3-point loss to LSU until that 7-point loss last week to Florida. This is a game Ole Miss should roll. They're so much better than Mississippi State, but you got to think about these are young kids. They've gone all week. It is a rivalry game, but you've gone all week, disappointed that you lost that game to Florida last week. And now, can you get this team up for this game? Oh, I know it's a big one, but man, that just. If you would have told me if they would have beat Florida, I said they're absolutely rolling Mississippi State. Now I'm a little worried about if they're going to come out, even though they should. They have all the horses. But again, these things, you just never know when you're dealing with young kids like this. Are they going to be able to block out that bad game and come out and have a big one this week or not?
Yeah, I feel like more of a game where I actually stick to the props. Dart, so it's interesting. 24 touchdowns, 6 picks. That seems a little, for me anyway, just watching some. I bet a lot. I have not bet a lot, but when I've actually bet Mississippi games. That seems a little bit low. I actually expected him to be even a little bit better than what he's actually been, which that sounds kind of crazy to say because
I
he's
mean,
been
it is
outstanding.
crazy, but the numbers, there's so many good quarterbacks this year that put up good numbers. And this offense has been so elite that you'd think these would be a little higher, but I mean, he's averaging almost 340 yards per game. The big thing that's been hurting him, Trey Harris, his number one wide receiver, has been dealing with injury. Missed a couple weeks, came back last week, caught a 43-yard touchdown, and got hurt on the one catch he had, and he's out. The chances are he's probably not going to play again this week. Obviously, Harris, a guy, 60 catches, 1,000 yards, and 7 touchdowns in 8 games this year. You lose a weapon like that. He's a guy that's a possible edge of the late first round, maybe second round wide receiver in the NFL draft. I mean, it's tough to lose your number one guy like that. Even though Dart's kept it going, it's tough to lose that top player like that.
Yeah, and JT, if you actually look at the Mississippi State's last 5 games here, they have Missouri, even at Tennessee, now UMass, whatever, doesn't make a difference, but Arkansas and Texas A&M, they've actually kept it, put it this way, 26.5 is a big spread.
Yeah, they haven't got blown out. Like I said, if this was the game to absolutely get in the SEC championship game for Ole Miss, I would be hammering this. But man, I'm nervous.
Yeah.
I probably am going to.
This feels like a prop. This feels like a prop.
Yeah, if I'm going to throw in a QB prop bet with over passing yards and touchdowns, I'm probably going to throw Dart in there. But man, in these rivalry games, you know how stuff gets crazy sometimes. 26. Just seems like a little too much for me. Like I said, a couple weeks ago, JT, I'm all over Ole Miss, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm on Dart. I would imagine, just given the stats I've actually looked at this year and the odds anyway, probably 315 to 320 passing yards is probably minus 115. That's probably a very safe bet. So regardless, put it this way, if Mississippi State even makes us even remotely interested, Dart's going to have to put the football in the air. He's going to actually have to pass quite a bit, and that's only going to benefit that. So I like the prop bets here. I wouldn't actually touch any line bets at all.
Yeah, jumping into a few of the later games. Rival game, Georgia Tech, Georgia. This one, another one, 19.5 points. Pretty huge number there. As we've seen all year, Georgia's still 7th in the country, 9-2. Obviously, still a really good team. They haven't really blown anybody out. I mean, even last week against UMass, they won 59-21, and UMass is terrible. Yeah. And they took till late in that game to actually blow them out. That was actually kind of close for a while. They beat Tennessee by 14, lost by 18 to Ole Miss, beat Florida by 14, beat Texas by 15. Like I said, Georgia Tech's been in a lot of games this year. I just don't know if I trust Georgia enough to take the spread on this. If this game gets up higher, say it gets up to 21, Georgia Tech, I could see myself leaning and taking Georgia Tech just because they've been tough. They just lost by 5 to Miami in a game that Miami had to come back and win, and then they won by 1 against NC State last week after 2 back-to-back tough games against Notre Dame and Virginia Tech. The big question for me, QB, what's happening there? That's really been the issue for them all year. As Haynes King, their starting quarterback, he's just been banged up. And so he played last week, but he didn't play a lot. He got in and out of the game, ran some, didn't throw a bunch. That makes me nervous on that one, just to see where he's at in this one. But man, Georgia they haven't won a lot of games by a bunch of points. I'd be nervous laying the 19.5 on Georgia.
Yeah, and JT, this one right here, the implied final score, according to my app, I'm actually sitting here watching this, Georgia 36.5, Georgia Tech 17. I would have to venture to say that Georgia, if you could actually get them for their team total under 33, 34, 35, it actually is close to even money, I'd jump over that, especially with the last 5 games for Georgia Tech. They've actually kept it fairly close. They've actually cut the score down. That just makes sense. I would, yeah, and looking at Georgia, what they've actually done offensively or not have actually done offensively, I would say the team total on Georgia on the under is probably the way to go, especially at plus money.
Yeah, I like that move there. A lot of those games were all Friday games, as with the holiday weekend, or excuse me, with Thanksgiving on Thursday, there is a bunch of games on Friday and a bunch of games on Saturday. So accordingly, look at that, especially if you're going to put your parlays in. I'm one of those, I hate taking parlays on multiple days, just sitting there waiting on it for the next one. So definitely look at that, maybe put something together for Friday and then look at the Saturday games. So we're going to jump into the Saturday action now. Starting off, the big game, Ohio State, Michigan. Ohio State coming in at 10-1, Michigan at 6-5. Over under right now, depending on where you're looking at, it's sitting at 20.5 here on DraftKings. I've seen it at 21 on a couple other sites. The total of 43. This is where it gets interesting for me. Is Ohio State's defense has been pretty dominant this year. A lot of lower over-unders. That 43 is interesting to me. Obviously, Indiana last week, that one went over at 38-15, but they've really been in that 20-30 range in a lot of games this year for Ohio State. What do you think? Two pretty good defenses here. 21's a ton in this type of rivalry game. Ohio State is so much better than Michigan this year, but are they 21 points better in this type of game? You just don't usually see a lot of blowouts in this matchup, Toast.
My first reaction would be go ahead and take Ohio State the points. And go ahead and just
Jamie agrees with you. He says Ohio State going to crush the Wolverines.
That's my thought. And while you're at it, go ahead and take the over the 43.5 as well. It could get. I could see a 38-14 game, somewhere around there. You're right on the over, but it's not going to be close. Ohio State, I mean, it's minus 1,600 for a reason. Michigan's not the same as they actually been, and probably the best play is the 21. The 21. If you could actually buy a couple points, actually put it in a parlay, actually get Ohio State down to maybe like a 16.5, and parlay it with something else, put that actually even money. That's probably the way to go.
Yeah, this one scares me. It feels like this should be Ohio State hands down. You know, this should be an easy bet. You'd be like, oh, Ohio State's going to blow them out. But again, you get these rivalry games. You never know what's going to happen. I think Ohio State's clearly the more talented team. Can they take them out by 3 touchdowns at home?
JT, let me ask you this. In recent memory, can you remember Michigan having this bad of quarterback play and this uncertainty of that position, where you actually have a guy that like, I'm retiring during this season, and then actually have somebody else come like?
I mean, they played 3 different quarterbacks this year. I mean, they've got 3 different guys who've thrown at least 40 passes or more this year. It's been a little wild. But Warren's got 6 touchdowns, 7 picks. Total's got 1 touchdown, 2 picks. Orgy, who's thrown the least amount of passes out of all the guys, he's the only guy positive at 3 touchdowns, 1 interception.
So think about the last 30 years, 40 years of Michigan football. Has that ever happened? Probably not. They
haven't had the best QB play ever, but they've had some quality guys, and I don't know if they've ever had it been this bad.
That's all you need to know, in my opinion. Is basically this is unprecedented, and when it's at Ohio State, we just saw it actually jump down a half point. Let's just hope it actually continues to go down. 20.5 looks a hell of a lot better than 21, right?
I agree.
So I'm just the spread seems juicy, and Ohio State's actually going to win. They're going to win big. I mean, they're one-dimensional, right? Michigan's one-dimensional. I understand rivalry week, and it's the game, and I get all that, but this shouldn't be close. It should not be close. And the spread, this is one spread where I get behind Ohio State.
Yeah, I can see your head's out on that one. To me, it's like, how do you not take Ohio State? They just seem like such a better team this year. Let's jump on to the next one. We've got South Carolina against Clemson. This is a game that I'm sure everybody thought would be a game earlier in the year. South Carolina's coming on like gangbusters here of late. They're 8-3 overall. Clemson's 9-2, number 12 versus number 15. So both these teams right on the verge of making the playoffs. This one's tough for me. Clemson's look better. Cade Klubnik's taken a lot of heat over the last couple of years. 2,700 yards passing, 29 TDs, and just 4 picks this year. Lenora Sellers on the other side for Carolina, 2,000 passing yards, 17 touchdowns, 6 picks. Rocket Sanders has bounced back, 821 yards and 11 touchdowns. And this South Carolina defense has been really, really good this year. They've been super solid.
JT,
this one's interesting to me. It's at Clemson. I'm leaning South Carolina in this game.
I am too. And when you say the signature win for South Carolina this year has actually been at Vanderbilt, right? 28-7 win. That's a 28-7.
Right, they just kind of dominated that game. They were great. They got the win at home against Texas A&M, 44-20. I think, after they lost they played close to Ole Miss and lost 27-3, excuse me, and then bounced back the next week and lost by 2 to Alabama at Alabama. I think people were like, oh, man, this team might be legit. You look at them right now, they're 3 losses this year. 3 points at number 16, 3 points at home against number 16 LSU, 24 points to Ole Miss, number 12, and at home, and then at Alabama by 2 points. They're on a big win streak right now, 5 in a row for them. Beat Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Vanderbilt, Missouri. Everyone but Oklahoma is ranked. So that tells you what kind of run they've been on. They've played 6 ranked teams already this year. This South Carolina team is ready to bomb. I just think they're in it this year. I don't think they were expecting it. I think they played a much tougher schedule than Clemson has.
Yep.
I like what I've seen out of Clemson since that loss in the opener to Georgia, but I think South Carolina gets in here and sneaks one out.
Yeah, I'm going to say, JT, they're not going to sneak it out. The only play here, you can actually see plus 2.5 for South Carolina at minus 110. Money line actually plus 110. If they're going to win this game, they're going to win it convincingly. I think they're going to break the spirit of Clemson. They're going to come in there and knock them in the mouth. If you actually look at their body of work, South Carolina, they're on an absolute roll right now. This is one where you look at price. And if you actually look at price, I actually like South Carolina, let's say at a minus 2.5 or minus 3.5. And actually you're getting it plus 180 to plus 200. That's probably the best play.
That's kind of
spicy. They're going to win because they're going to win. It may not end up being in a close game. You got to think about it. In a close game, Clemson's actually probably going to have the upper hand. They probably dominated in years past. They're actually at home. They still actually are holding on aspirations of actually making a playoff. South Carolina, this is their time. If they're going to win, they're going to win convincingly. So I would say that go ahead and actually get on them the minus 2.5, 3.5, 4, and actually drive up the price a little bit and actually have that big cash in.
Yeah, I like that idea. If you like South Carolina, getting them some minus some points there and get that juice way up there. I like that a lot. Maybe take them at minus 3, 4 in there if you think they can win by a touchdown. Like you said, get a plus 180, plus 200. I like that. Another big one. I can't remember the last time this game has been this big, but Vanderbilt, Tennessee. Coming in number 8, Tennessee, coming into this game, 9-2 against Vanderbilt, 6-5. Vanderbilt has played everyone tough this year. Tennessee's minus 11, over under 48.5. This one's interesting for me. Tennessee right now is leading. They're the only team with only 1 loss in the SEC right now. So a win here. Texas is the only team with 1 loss. Tennessee right now is at 5-2. Georgia is playing that non-conference game against Georgia Tech, so they're a half game ahead of them. A win by Tennessee gets them to 6-2. Georgia would be 6-2, and then they're waiting to see if Texas and then get on. But Tennessee with a nice win here to get to 6-2, even if they don't make the SEC championship game, they lose the tiebreaker out. I think 10-2, they've got to get in if they win this one. I think that they're just been one of the better teams in the country this year. I don't know how you can keep them out. So I think they win, they're in. Even if they don't make the SEC championship game. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree, JT. I was getting ready to say, I was going to ask you specifically, is this a must-win for Tennessee? And it sounds like it is, right? You have to win this game.
I think they win this one. They're in. They would lose the tiebreaker to Georgia, as they both had the same conference record. And they lost head-to-head to Georgia. But I think you can get 4 teams in the SEC. You'd have to have a lot of teams fall apart, I think, to get multiple 3-loss teams in. I think you get them at 10-2, where they've been basically in the top 10 to 15 all year. I think you're going to see the committee like them and they're going to get in. So I think even if you don't make the SEC championship game, I think if Tennessee, I think you feel good about you're in the playoff. Do we think they can cover the 11? That's a toughie. Their offenses look good. The defense has been a much better than they have been in the past, but Vanderbilt has been a tough out all year, as they have been really good. I remember when Vanderbilt in week 4, Missouri beat them by 3 in overtime, and everybody was making fun of Missouri. They were like, oh, this team, oh my God. I'm like, you just barely beat Vandy at home. And then they come out 2 weeks later and win at home against Alabama. Then they take out Kentucky, who took out Georgia. Then they lose a 3-point game to, at the time, was number 5 Texas. Then they turn around, beat Auburn by 10, and then lost to South Carolina 28-7, and then LSU last week 24-17. So they've been in every game. The only one they haven't covered the 11 was the South Carolina 28-7 loss. So that's a toughie in this one at 11 points. I think Tennessee wins this game, but I'm a little nervous about this spread. Vandy's played hard, and you know they would absolutely love to knock off Tennessee and ruin their season.
Yeah, I mean, JT, I was going to ask you, when was the last time Vanderbilt actually made a bowl, got a bowl?
Ooh, I need to look up in the last time they made a bowl game. It's been a minute. It's been a minute.
Maybe they've actually done that in the last couple of years, but overall,
I know when Franklin was there before he went to Penn State, they made a couple bowl games.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you actually look at what Vanderbilt's actually done, man, they play some close games. Again, they would actually love nothing more to actually ruin Tennessee's season. If they actually were to lose this game and Vanderbilt actually win, Tennessee's not going to go probably anywhere at 9-3. My guess are probably not going to get in the playoff. I don't know that. I'm guessing 9-3 is not going to cut it.
It's going to be close. They would have to have a lot of other teams get knocked off and fall to 9-3 too, and then get the tie on that. But you don't want to have 3. If you're a 10-2 SEC team, I think you're in. So I think they get a win, they're in.
And I remember this quarterback for Vanderbilt because I used to gamble on him last year when he was at New Mexico, and I remember him, Pavia,
Diego Pavia.
Yeah, and man, efficient, 16 touchdowns, 3 picks, and I know he can run. He can run.
He's just tough. The guy's tough as nails.
So at home, and this guy seems to be a winner. I mean, just kind of has that it factor where, again, a gamer. This is going to be a tough game for Tennessee to win. I would definitely take Vanderbilt at the +11 at -110. And if you're really getting overzealous, I would say the +310 on the money line. I would not shock me at all if Vanderbilt won this game.
That would be interesting. Like, I basically hit the cover on Vanderbilt all year. I think the only game they haven't covered was the South Carolina game. Was the only one they've lost by more than 2 scores.
There you go. I mean, there you go. The +11 looks very good. That's one of our best plays, probably.
Yeah, they look good. Let's jump into a couple other games down here. Looking in the mix, Kansas -1.5 against Baylor. I'm not going to get heavy into that game. Kansas is on fire right now. I'm all over Kansas. That might be a best bet of the week. Baylor's not looked great, and Kansas is just playing out of their mind right now.
That's easy. That's
at -1.5. I'm all over Kansas in that game.
That's a Plums bet right there.
Yeah, I think I was going to say. Man. I think that's. I was going to ask you if you're going to want to put in a Plums bet for Benny.
No, I wouldn't step on Benny's toes, but that's a Plums bet. Kansas has finally decided, we'll play football this year, and now they're actually on a roll. We know their quarterback's actually, he has talent. That is shocking to me, actually, how once they got beat by Illinois early in the season, man, it just kind of spiraled downhill there. They found their footing. They're actually coming back. That's a great, great play right now. Put them on the money line. Kansas is going to win that game.
Yeah, Baylor's been on fire. So, not to totally rip Baylor, they've actually reeled off 5 wins in a row after they started this year 2-4. So they're on a little bit of a win streak, though they've not played great teams. They beat Texas Tech. They beat Oklahoma State. They beat TCU. All teams struggling a bit this year. Just won by 10 against Houston last week, and then beat at Virginia. West Virginia is probably their most impressive win with 49-35 win. Kansas is on fire right now. Kansas is playing great. I'm all over Kansas in that game.
Yep.
Next one, Kentucky, Louisville, 7-4 for Louisville. Kentucky 4-7. Kentucky, man, the defense was been phenomenal all year. The offense has fallen apart on them. So many injuries. They've been in every game this year. Just strolling a bit here. This one's interesting for me. If it wasn't for the injuries on offense for Kentucky, even though they have a much worse record, they only lost by 10 at Tennessee. They lost by 17 at Texas. The surpriser was the 14-point loss to Auburn. They got smoked by Florida, only lost by 7 to Vandy, and that was after they beat that really nice upset of Ole Miss, 20-17. Like I said, they lost to Georgia by 1 point and then 25 to South Carolina. So this team's been in it. I felt like Louisville has been overrated all year. I am gonna hit my under bet. Hopefully, I love it. I got Louisville under 8.5. They've got 7 coming into this one. So as long as they don't make this is a regular season win, so I'm going to hit that bet. So I'm super excited about that. They got a nice win last week against Pittsburgh, who's kind of fallen off after a good start. Usually I would take Kentucky in this game, but I'm really nervous about all the injuries on offense and whether they can actually put up any points.
Yeah, JT, given the over under at 48.5, I'm guessing, and given the money line, I'm guessing the lines are probably set for Louisville to actually win this game 27-21, somewhere around there. And I have a very hard time thinking that Louisville, given their body of work, what they've actually done in their last 5, and how good Kentucky is on defense, that they're actually going to score 4 times. I just don't see it. So the play for me anyway is probably Louisville under total team points of 27.5. If you actually can find that and it's close to plus money, that's probably the play.
No, that'd be Louisville's just been a hard team to figure out this year. They've been all over the place. They've looked absolutely phenomenal in certain games, season, and they've looked terrible in other games.
They screwed me early in the season, very early in the season. Georgia, right? Went in there and just barely squeaked out. They squeaked out a win, right? And I mean, it was an ugly game. But man, if you look at Kentucky, 4-7, but man, the way they actually play football, that ugly game, that close scoring game, low scoring game as well, they could easily be 5-6 or 6-5 instead of the 4-7. I mean, it's just a game of chance at that point. And will have nothing more in this to go ahead and say, Louisville, we're going to bury you guys this week. So I love the money line on Kentucky, like I said, at plus 140, but also Louisville, if you can find them, again, at plus 26, 27 points for the team total points, take the under on that. If just you're going to get plus money, it's going to be hard for them to score.
Jumping in here as we're getting near the end of the show, we'll find up a couple more of these big rivalry games. USC Notre Dame. Notre Dame wins. They're into the playoffs at 7.5. USC has not looked good. Notre Dame has been absolutely dominant since that early season loss to Northern Illinois. I'm
Plums
taking the
bet.
7.5. I'm loving Notre Dame in this game. I think Notre Dame puts it to USC. USC's already made a change at quarterback. They just barely beat UCLA last week, 19-13, to hold on to my UCLA under bet, as we're almost there with UCLA. I just need one more loss out of the Bruins. They've killed me all year. I refuse to bet on any game they're in anymore because they've absolutely just hammered me this year. But I just think Notre Dame puts it to USC. This was a game early in the year we thought, man, that could be an absolute barn burner to end out the season, and USC has not looked good, and Notre Dame has been dominant.
Yep, minus 7.5. JT, that's the play, right? Spread minus 108. Yeah. Obviously, minus 258, not a very good price on the money line. You don't need the money line. Notre Dame's going to win this game. The spread's actually a way to go. You actually don't need to worry about the line. Makes a difference. Total points. Just actually get on the spread. I think Notre Dame actually wins, and they win big.
Yep, I think Notre Dame puts it to them. Alabama, Auburn, 11.5. This one's toughy. Alabama, people are still talking about, can they stay in this one? Can they make it with the losses they have? Auburn has not looked good. They've been pretty bad all year. They've got some really good young players on that team. Some exciting freshmen at wide receiver on that team. Again, another big rivalry game. The question is, Alabama. I don't know, Toast. Did you watch any of that game last week? I just was shocked at how bad they looked in that game. And Jaden Milroe has looked pretty dominant most of the year. He looked awful last week.
Yeah, there's two things shocking. One, 3 points. Two, you're actually losing it at Oklahoma, and Oklahoma's been bad this year.
They've been bad,
right? So the quarterback situation to actually work out Oklahoma, we all know that. So that is a shocking loss. I mean, they went into Oklahoma and they took them lightly. That's the only explanation. And you would have to think they're going to come out this week at Auburn at actually home and throttle them.
You would think, but Auburn just came out and won 43-41 in a multiple overtime game against Texas A&M. So, again, there's a lot of these teams I just don't understand. Auburn's been pretty terrible this year, and then all of a sudden they'll play somebody close. They'll play a tight game, and then they beat Vanderbilt, which was a game I didn't think they would win, and then they turn around, they beat Texas A&M, which was a huge loss for A&M going into this game with Texas. So, I'll bet the Milroe touchdown.
Of course. I mean, he gets that every single time. I think there's only been one game where he didn't have a touchdown, and most actually has 2 rushing touchdowns.
Last week against Oklahoma was only the second game all year he hasn't rushed for at least 1 touchdown.
Yeah, and I remember that because I was in on that, so I lost that. But let me ask you this, JT, is Alabama's got to know right now, not only do they have to win, they have to pump Auburn, right? Yeah. So this is where the score differential is going to matter for Alabama. Going to be 9-3, whether they could have a chance to actually make their SEC championship game.
Which they can't make the SEC championship game unless a ton of people get they would need to win and hope a bunch of people lose, and that the committee would say, I like their 9-3 better than somebody else's 10-2. You know what I'm saying? They say, I like their 9-3 looks better than some team from the ACC or the Big 12's 10-2.
Yep. So JT, the only way Alabama knows they can actually make it in is to win.
They gotta win this game. This is a must-win game.
No. And to win big.
They need to
actually just destroy Auburn. To actually give the committee something to think about, to where, okay, we're not going to make the championship game. Hope there's actually an upset in a championship game, or maybe not an upset in the SEC championship game, where whoever actually wins is the favorite, and Alabama can actually sneak in as an 11 or 12, but they have to pump these guys bad. So minus 11.5 is actually looking pretty good. That's just, again, just initially looking at it.
I could see a big bounce back. I could see Alabama after the embarrassment last week, a big bounce back.
If they squeak out a win, they're not good enough. If they actually lose, not good enough. They got to win big. They got to win big.
Another big one, ACC. Miami's got to have it. They're at Syracuse. Syracuse, a couple upset losses earlier in the year, or this could be for the ACC to get to the ACC championship game. Syracuse cannot get in. This is an interesting one, 10.5. I've been on Syracuse a lot this year. The question is whether they can slow down Miami's offense, and you can see by the over-under, they don't think they can. It's 67.5 is the over-under in this game. I mean, they're expecting absolute fireworks in this one between Syracuse and Miami, and we've got 2 of the top quarterbacks in the country. 10-1 Miami, sitting at number 6 in the country. Syracuse is at 8-3. Couple disappointing losses in there for Cuse, as they easily could be sitting here at 10-1 or 9-2 themselves. But you got Cam Ward, McCord. This is going to be a game where I'm going to do a same game parlay. I'm going to just jump on McCord and Ward over passing yards, both of them. I've been hammering them both over 300 passing yards. Cam Ward last week killed me. Everybody else hit. I had an 8-pick parlay where I took 4 quarterbacks, all with over 300 yards passing and 2 touchdowns. Cam Ward, for one of the first times all year, didn't hit it. He was under 300, was brutal, as he's been one of the top passers. He's been averaging about 360 a game. He threw for under 300. You've got currently number 2 in the country, 361 a game for Syracuse, 360 for Miami. So you got number 2 and number 3 passing in the country, McCord versus Ward. Both of them are sitting. McCord's just under 4,000 passing yards with 26 TDs. Ward's at 3,700 with 34 TDs. I think this is going to be a shootout. I think you're going to see all kinds of points. I'm going to jump on McCord, 300 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Ward, 300 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. I'm probably going to also throw in Jackson Meeks from Syracuse. He's been on fire lately. 7 catches, 110 yards last week. 2 weeks ago, 7 for 105. So I'm going to probably get him in the 50-60 range as far as receiving yards if I can. And then Xavier Restrepo for Miami is another guy. He had a down week last week, 5 for 45. And he had 1 week against Florida State where they were up early, didn't do much. He had 4 for 24. But other than that, is the other 4 games he's been over 103 out of 4 and over 78 in the other one. So he's going to be another one I'm going to look for somewhere around 70, 80 yards receiving for him and possibly touchdown. And I'm probably going to jump on a LaQuint Allen rushing touchdown and possibly a Damian Martinez rushing touchdown. I'm going to get one of those together in a same game parlay.
Yeah. Hey, JT, Miami's played the last 5 games. Schedule has not been, it's been pretty weak. The Georgia Tech game is like, okay, that looks pretty bad. But if you look at Louisville, they actually win that game. They give up 45 points. You actually look at Duke at home, they give up 31 points as well. I mean, given the fact that both these teams actually put up points and actually put up a ton of points, would it shock you, and do you actually expect both these teams actually score over 30 points? And if so, the 67.5 doesn't actually look that high. I mean, they've proven all year they can't stop.
I think
a lot
it's definitely
of people.
reasonable.
It's
if
reasonable.
You look at,
I mean,
if you look Syracuse the last 4 weeks for Syracuse, 55 points, 58, 68, 69. So I think you're in that range. So what I'd like to do is in the same game parlay move that down.
Yes.
I want to get it like that 60 to 62 range.
Yep.
Because I'm going to put like 5 or 6 legs in this parlay. So moving it down and taking it like minus 200 or 220 is not going to scare me. I'm going to move it down a little bit and take that over. Because I think you've got at least 31-28 in this one. That gets you to 59, right? I think you're right in that range at least.
That's light.
So, so if I want to get this one down to like 59 or 60, if I can do that, and then take the over.
Yep, I'm with you. And here's the deal, JT. I'm going to ask you right now. I know we're actually coming up on time here, but Syracuse, what are they doing playing on a Saturday? They're a Friday night team, man. What's going on?
Well, they've actually, because they've had, Syracuse has been down the last couple of years. I have to admit it, my boys, the Qs. So they took a lot of Thursday, Friday night games this year just to get on national TV. And I actually don't think it was a bad idea. They've gotten some pretty nice recruits.
Great idea.
They've looked good. Kyle McCord, if they gave an award for best transfer, I think Kyle McCord would get the award.
Gosh.
I mean, he has been phenomenal. I still get into it with Ohio State fans online who said McCord's terrible and he's only good because he's playing at Syracuse. I still think he would be awesome if he was at Ohio State.
Save your energy.
I know there's people that don't. They weren't going to agree with me, but I think Kyle McCord, sneaky underrated NFL guy that could go in the 3rd, 4th round and maybe make some room for himself in the NFL. He's been phenomenal this year. He's been throwing the ball all over the field. He's like I said, he's up there at the tops of passing yards in the entire nation. He has just been great. So I've been all over. I took him over 300 last week with the 2 touchdowns. They threw for school record 465 yards. So he absolutely had a monster game last week. So, and Miami's defense has not been that great. So like I said, that's a same game parlay. Like I told you with the Colorado game, I'm going to jump in on that as my Friday same game parlay. And then Saturday, I'm probably jumping in on this one as my same game parlay. And I'll leave that one up there too. A couple games as we finish things out here. We won't get in depth. Penn State, Maryland, 24.5. Do you think Penn State covers? They've been absolutely dominant in these situations this year when they're a big time favorite. Maryland been a little iffy.
Sorry, JT. I lost you there for a second. Nope.
I was going to say, do you think Penn State covers the 24.5? You're worried about it? You taking it or no?
I don't like it. No. Okay. I would again, not going to say Maryland's any good or whatnot, but Nevertheless, again, rivalry week, 24.5 is a hell of a spread. I'm staying away from the game line there. If anything, let's go ahead and take Penn State. Take a couple props, and also maybe if you actually can find them. I see the over-unders at 50, so you're actually probably looking at Penn State to actually score 30 points. All right, so I'd actually like the team total, if you can actually score it down a little bit to 26, 27 and a half, take the over on the Penn State team total, but I'm not going to go on the spread. No.
Missouri's -3 at home against Arkansas. Brady Cook coming back last week. They've been playing some inspired football. If it wasn't for the last second loss to South Carolina, Missouri would probably still be in the mix to make the playoffs, which would be great. I took them over 9.5 wins this year. Obviously not going to get to that one, as they're going to get to, if they can win this one, get to 9. I like Missouri in this one at home against Arkansas. They absolutely owned Arkansas the last couple of years, especially under Eli Drinkwitz, the head coach from Missouri. They've owned them. So I'm on Missouri on this one. I have no problem taking the -3 there. Arizona State.
JT, on that one real quick. Am I mistaken, or has Arkansas just given up a crap ton of points this year and also scored a ton of points?
Yeah, Arkansas has been an interesting team. They've looked really good at times. Their quarterback play has really been the difference. When he plays well, they play awesome. And they've looked good in some games, and then they've just fallen apart. Lost by 10 to Texas in a real hard battle, 20-10.
Yeah.
Mississippi absolutely rolled them 63-31. They rolled Mississippi State 58-25. LSU put it to them 34-10. The upside of the year right now is them 19-14 over Tennessee. Huge upset there. So whenever they play good defense, they also lost by 4 to Texas A&M, 21-17. So when they play really good defense, they are in games. When they don't play good defense, that's when they're in trouble. So I think this is going to be an interesting game. I think it's going to be close between Missouri and Arkansas. Missouri has had Arkansas's number lately. I think Missouri is going to want to end it out strong here. Brady Cook, their quarterback from Missouri, has been there. I think he wants a big win to finish out against Arkansas, leading them into a bowl game. I just think Missouri at home gets this one done. Call it a homer pick, if you will. I just think
sure. No, makes sense. That I put them at 9-3 in a very, very good bowl game, and if not a New Year's Day game, you're going to be playing on New Year's Eve. So great bowl.
Another one real quick as we keep trying to move along here at the end. Arizona State has come out of nowhere in the Big 12. They've got a shot to win the Big 12. I think they control their own destiny at this point. They're 9-2, ranked 16th, 4-7 Arizona. Arizona has been insanely disappointing. The only good thing about Arizona this year was me and Benny took our Tet McMillan over 1,000 receiving yards and absolutely hammered that. He's on at 1,250 already this year, so we should have put $1 million on it. That was the one bet of the year. Should have put $1 million on him. He's already cashed us on that one. This one's -9. Arizona State's on a roll. They're playing out of their mind. They know how big this game is, even on the road. I think Arizona State puts it to them. They got the big one last week against BYU by 5. They've just been turning it up, won by 10 against Kansas State, 4 points in a close game against USC, beat Oklahoma State by 21. Like I said, this has just not been a good Arizona team this year. I think Arizona State, I'll take the 9. I think they can win this by 2 scores.
Yep, I'll agree, JT. And another play, I'll continue to go the well. Go ahead and take Arizona on the over team total points. And if you can get it to 30 and a half, somewhere around there, even money, it makes all the sense in the world.
You're saying Arizona State take the team points.
I'm sorry. Yes. Arizona team points. Yes, my bad. Over 30 and a half, somewhere around there, even money. Makes sense. Look at that too.
UCLA, I don't even want to talk about them. I need them to lose. They're 8-point favorites against Fresno State. I need them to lose to go under wins on the year. So let's go Fresno State Bulldogs. Rooting for that one hard. I will not bet on this game, but I'm rooting hard for the Bulldogs to get me my undercover there. I don't want any part of NC State, North Carolina. Both those teams falling apart. Mac Brown just fired by the Tar Heels.
Yeah.
I want to avoid that game.
He's been there 16 years. They said 16
It's crazy how long ago he was there, then left for Texas, and then came back. He's been there a long time. Crazy. He's made that program relevant. Looking at any of the late games, see if there's anything that jumps out at me. What do you think Purdue, Indiana? Indiana needs an absolute crush of Purdue to show that they definitely should be in, but they're only one loss. I think they're in the playoffs. I think they got to put it to Purdue. I know it's a rivalry. Purdue's been terrible this year. I think everybody but Illinois, and the one game I lost on the spread in a monster parlay that week was the only one that haven't covered. I think Indiana comes out and wants to just hammer Purdue at home and guarantee themselves on playoffs. 29.5 is a ton. I don't think it's enough. I think Indiana absolutely rolls them.
Yep, I agree. Because if you look at the over under there, in relationship to the spread, that Purdue, you got to think, is Purdue going to score 17 points? Probably not. So that means at 56.5, Indiana's going to score the majority of the points. So I like Indiana minus 29.5. They got to pump these guys. They got to make it hard on the committee. Even if, I say on the committee, they lose this game, they're probably out, right? Because they're Indiana, and they actually lost the previous game.
You can't lose to Purdue. You can't lose to Purdue. You got to win.
No, they're not going to lose to Purdue. But do they have to win convincingly?
You don't want to play this one close. You don't want to give the committee any chance to knock you out. Mike Cucci says Arkansas sucks. Lay the points. I like what Mike's there. Jamie says, laugh out loud. FSU is the team you should be talking about. I hope you mean Fresno State, who we just talked about. Go Bulldogs. Yes, FSU, go Bulldogs. We need a win this week over UCLA to keep that one rolling. Oklahoma LSU is a game I want to avoid. If I had to, I'd take LSU, but that one's got me nervous. LSU is starting to play terrible here at the end of the year. I do love Garrett Nussmeier. I think he needs to come back to school. I think he has a shot to be QB1 next year in the league in college football. Florida at Florida State minus 15. Florida's looking a lot better. It makes it tough not to take them. Don't you take Florida in this against Florida State?
Yes.
Florida State's been just awful.
Yes. I mean, what would Florida prove at this point? I mean, it's a dumpster fire. I mean,
Florida's got to
2 scores. Come on.
If I can buy the point of parlay to 14 just in case, I'd do it. But man, I think Florida's got to roll on. Florida State's been absolutely awful. We'll get to the last couple of games here. Texas A&M. Obviously, a monster one for Texas. They win. They get first place in the SEC and are absolutely in the SEC championship game. A loss, we've got a bunch of tie scenarios, decide who gets in. They're 5.5 point favorite at A&M, who's coming off the real big upset to Auburn last week.
Don't want any part of this game.
This game makes me nervous. I feel like Texas should win this one convincingly, but they haven't won hardly anything convincingly this year.
So stay away from it.
I don't want any part of this game. I'll watch this game, but I'm not putting money on this game. Because I could see it going anyway. And I really wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised either way. Oregon, 18.5 point favorite at home against Washington. Washington's been very average this year, but Oregon, another one of those teams. I don't know if I've ever felt less confident about a number one team in the country than I feel about Oregon. How do you feel about Oregon?
Well, I just imagine, JT, Oregon actually knows that this game, as far as, so let me ask you, seeding 1 through 4 is getting a bye, right?
Yep.
Even
if they lose this one, it goes to tiebreakers. They should be they're in the playoffs no matter what. Even if they lose this game, they're in the playoffs.
And they've already actually
Big Ten championship game and whether they can get a bye and where their high seed is. Obviously, luckily for them, they got the head-to-head win with Ohio State, so they get the jump on there. The interesting thing in the Big Ten is almost none of the teams at the top played each other. So that's the interesting is you got Indiana with 1 loss, Penn State with 1 loss. Penn State took out Indiana. Or excuse me, they didn't play each other. Indiana lost to Ohio State, and Ohio State lost to Oregon. So it's a little bit of weird on how those tiebreakers, how they've just determined how those will work. Usually this is a super close game in the past. Washington, Oregon. We saw some of the games of the year last year when these two teams went at it in the Pac-12. It was unbelievable performances last year. This should be a pretty upper hand game for Oregon, especially being at home. I don't feel confident in the 18.5 though. They have not covered at home. They just have not. They've won and they've been a good team, so I can't say they're not good. They just won by 3 points at Wisconsin.
Let's stick on the
They
props
only beat
on that one.
Maryland by 21 at home.
Right. Let's stick on the props on that one. Any prop bets that make sense, but yeah, any game lines just don't make sense at all.
Yeah, maybe late night I'll throw something together. I do like Evan Stewart and Tez Johnson, but yeah, that one scares me. I don't like it at all. I'm probably staying away from that one. Iowa State, Kansas State 2.5. That one's Iowa State needs to win that one.
They got to win
for the Big 12 to get a shot to keep moving on in the Big 12. Kansas State has been an upset-minded team. Iowa State's not looked great lately. I'm probably staying away from that one as well.
Yep.
Getting later, BYU's kind of fallen off, though. Houston's been terrible this year, so that one's a toughie. And then we got our late-night stuff. Air Force, San Diego State, New Mexico, Hawaii. New Mexico has been really interesting. If you can get – and I don't know if they'll get you out on there, but if you can get some player props in that game, I'll tell you what, New Mexico's quarterback, I've got him in a couple fantasy leagues this year, and he has been an absolute stud. Devin Dampier, if you've never seen him play this year, the guy has been just wild. He's got 2,500 passing yards, 12 touchdowns, 12 picks. So he tells you he does a little bit of everything, but he's rushed for 1,000 yards and 16 touchdowns as well. He's a give and take away guy. He can have awesome games, but that one ought to be an interesting one. I would lean New Mexico as he's gotten pretty good. Usually, Benny is all over the Warriors on the late game. He loves to bet Hawaii, but New Mexico coming off a really nice 3-point win against Washington State. Really got upset loss to Wyoming and Colorado State earlier in the year. But I don't know. I kind of like this New Mexico team and what they've been doing lately. I might jump on something late night there, but that might be it.
Yeah.
So Toast, you got we're coming up here on hour 15. You got a Plums bet. I'm going to let you take Benny's Plums bet. I think you said it earlier, but what are you thinking?
JT, I'm going to tell you right now, I totally forgot what my Plums bet was.
I mean, we were talking about Kansas. We were talking about Kansas for a little bit.
Kansas is great. Kansas is great. I'd actually have to look back at my list and actually have made some notes, which I didn't do, and would have actually had this written down. But there's like 2 or 3 Plums bet I actually liked. If you can remember them, put them down for me and actually send it to me, text it to me, and I'm actually a game, man.
All right, I'll put that in for you. We'll get it together. For my JT Parlay play of the day, I'm going to build it right now as we're talking here. I like Colorado. I like Colorado on Friday. I think they're going to put it to them. They need a big win. I know they're a little disappointed after last week's loss, but I like them.
Props, right? Props.
I'm going to put a same game parlay with the props in there. Definitely on that one. We're a fan of Ohio State. I like Ohio State if you can get them at -20 in that one.
Yeah, that was another one I loved.
Yeah, we are a fan of South Carolina taking the money line. You could always pump it up, like you said. I do like them on the money line. I do like Kansas. We talked about throwing them in there. That one is in there for my JT Parlay play of the day. That's 4. Let's see if I got 2 more. I feel I really like Notre Dame. We're jumping Notre Dame in there.
Yeah, that was -7.5, right, JT? -7.5. I remember right. Yeah,
Notre Dame, and I'm liking. I'm liking Arizona State, and I'm liking Missouri in there. That gets me to a 7 picker. I like it depending on where you want to buy. On DraftKings right now, that gets me a 7-pick parlay at plus 9,896. Obviously, wait and jump on the boost. They're going to throw a boost out there if you're on DraftKings. They always do a 50% boost on a 4+ parlay. I love it. So that is going to be my JT Parlay play of the day. Colorado -16.5, Ohio State -20.5, South Carolina money line, Kansas -1.5, Notre Dame -7.5. Arizona State -9 and Missouri -3. We'll put that one up. 7-pick parlay plus 9,896. Love that. Going to be right around 10. It's going to be over 10,000 once we add that boost to it, which I absolutely love. Any final thoughts? Toast is, hey, it's a little bit sad. Final weekend of the regular season, but We still got championship week and we still got playoffs. A lot of college football left still.
JT, the only I'm going to ask you to do is maybe make a plug and actually put a plug in there for our hockey podcast.
Absolutely.
So,
great idea.
I mean,
Jamie says,
honestly,
thanks guys for joining.
Yeah,
thanks for joining somebody. I want to say Toast. So anybody who haven't seen Toast, he's jumped on here a couple times and helped us out here on the college football betting show with me and Ben Dyer. Toast is my co-host for Around the Ice on Fantasy and Frames. So if you haven't ever watched that, you're into hockey at all, we talk about fantasy, we talk about gambling. If you like gambling like we do, if you're watching this show, you like gambling. So jump on over there, look at our gambling segments
every
on
Tuesday,
hockey.
8:30.
Toast puts out his Toast Takes on Twitter, so follow him at Toast Clark. He puts out his Toast Takes, which is his favorite gambling bets on hockey every day. So definitely follow him to do that. Follow me at JT Orange, where I put my JT Parlay play of the day. I'll put out different ones each day, plus my same game parlays. On NFL Sundays, I'll put up my touchdown parlay and a bunch of those other ones as well. But yes, follow us Around the Ice at Fantasy and Frames. Go around Fantasy and Frames, check out everything else they have there. All kinds of good shows, tons and tons of content from everybody. Thanks to everybody who jumped on here, watched the show, and interacted with us. We appreciate it much. May all your bets hit and the trading never quit. We'll check you next time on the Stew with JT Brew on Fantasy and Frames.
You up on trades and wire moves, you ain't designed to lose. Find you jumping over seemingly nothing, racking up points, makes the game a little more fun to watch. Can drop release, we started with the mock draft and now we making a mockery of the leaderboard. Quite obviously not a scrub, so start an institute, make evaluations like a commissioner do. It's to the point your wife make you watch in a different room. Update your roster and pick and choose when you get some news. Not much that we enjoy more than sipping through, sifting through new statistics to make it to our end zones through different routes. Universities, institutes, down to homies who click in groups. I introduce you to the Stew with JT Brew.